All right, welcome back. Today we've got Jack Starzyk. Jack is at Miami University and is the class of 2028. All right, welcome to the discussion, Jack.
Thanks for having
Um,
me.
yeah, as we kick things off, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Things like where'd you grow up, how'd you end up
Mhm.
at Miami of Ohio, and where are you planning to go after school?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kent, Ohio, where Kent State University is, if you're familiar with that. I ended up going to Miami just because Kent State would have been like high school part two. Everybody from my high school always went there. Also I was really interested in high finance, pretty early on. And just from shopping around a little, it looked like if I wanted to end up on Wall Street or something like that, going to Miami would probably be my best bet.
Excellent, excellent. And so, yeah, tell us a bit more about your career goal after school.
Um, yeah, so I'm really just interested in high finance in general. I find all that stuff to be really interesting. Um, Specifically though, I think pretty standard track. I'd like to get into investment banking out of school. Just because I've heard you kind of learn the most broad skills there, and they work you so much. You're in the office. You're kind of like learning through osmosis and all that. Um, but I don't know. I would like to step into the buy side at some point. I think maybe being able to think a little bit more strategically and make investment decisions as a member of a private equity fund. That's something that's really interesting to me as well. But for the time being, I'm pretty much just set on investment banking.
Okay, absolutely. Well, no, I mean, certainly, there's a lot of folks who share that goal, but everyone has their own little different flavor on it. I think it's certainly typical to want to maybe get into the buy side after some investment banking, build those, build all those different skills around managing a deal. Um, and you mentioned a goal to really be ultimately on the investment, kind of on the investment committee, the IC, in making decisions on buy and sell or make, move forward or not move forward with different opportunities. So, just know that that's a process to kind of get to that point, right? Because the people who are really making the decisions, they tend to, you can get situations where they're on the 10-year experience side, but they're typically going to be more on the maybe 15, maybe 20 or longer. And so, but hey, again, that's more generalized. Any one individual can have any kind of different path, but it's good to know sort of what the general things are. If that's your goal, what I would say one thing to really care a lot about is diligence.
Okay.
You know, and that's one of the things you'll learn in investment banking is managing the diligence process. So going into a client, collecting their documents, doing the financial analysis, understanding, presenting the financials, reviewing them with the CFO, putting together all the other corporate documentations in a data room so you can see the diligence process up close and personal, being in the weeds. That's going to set a foundation down the road when you're on the buy side. So the more familiar you can get with that diligence process, that's why being in a firm that where you have lots of deal flow, working on two, three, or four deals at once is where you want to be. Working deals from end to end is where you want to be. If you want to get the reps in order to really start to build skills around that whole M&A, that buying and or selling process.
Gotcha. That makes
Some things
sense.
that some
And
some things to
would you
think
say
about.
that's it's easier to find an experience like that in the middle market, or have you found that? I know you worked at Baird.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a middle market guy. I mean, I have made it abundantly clear I'm a little biased towards the middle market, but yes, I think that's the typical advice you might give. Right, if you're in the middle market or the lower middle market, you're going to have higher deal flow. If not,
Hmm.
your bank's going to go out of business because the
Yeah.
deals are smaller. You have to do more of them to stay in business. So that's not even like a theoretical thing. That's just a practical reality of that type of business model. Um, and so, but that's good for you because if you can come out of a 3-year stint as an analyst, maybe, you know, and you've been on 4, 5, 6, 7 deals end to end, Like that's impressive. And plus a bunch of other projects. Um, like that experience is going to be worth something. You're building that experience. You're building human capital by getting that exposure to those deals. And so I would say absolutely. If you want to be on the investment decision making side, you're going to have to see as many deals as possible. Um, Compare that to a typical bulge bracket where maybe you get higher visibility. You'll likely work with clients that are bigger. Um, you might be on a call with the CFO of a publicly traded company, right?
Mhm.
Whoa, that has its own cool power in and of itself,
Yeah.
right? Whereas in the middle market, you might be working with a business owner that has a business that's worth 100 million that
Hmm.
sells toilet paper and
Yeah.
and cleans latrines,
Yeah.
cleans porta potties, and that's it. That's what they do. It's
Hmm.
$100 million business. It's not glamorous at all,
Hmm.
and this person lives in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's the type. But there's a lot more of those types of clients out there, and those deals happen almost no matter what the economy is doing. Yes, there's an ebb and a flow to banking. It is a cyclical industry. There's no question about it. But as you go lower in deal size, it tends to be a little bit more stable. Again, there's still ups and downs. Let's be clear about that. But it can be a little more stable because if you think about it, if someone has a medical issue, God forbid someone has a heart attack, an owner, someone has a medical issue, they're later in life, that business needs to get sold.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter if the stock market is going down,
Hmm.
um, or if inflation is up, or whatever whatever the broader economic indicators are saying. Um, or if we're in a recession or what have you. So there's a little bit of that. It's not recession. Again, recession proof is a ridiculous, crazy thing to say. You would never say about investment banking or M&A, but you can say that there's a kind of a core deal flow that will still happen in the lower middle market.
Yeah.
So again, it just depends on what you want. Do you want that higher visibility? Bigger accounts, maybe more complex analyses, um, or do you want more of a direct touch to getting reps in true M in the bread and butter types of M&A transactions that make up the M&A market, make up the
Hmm.
vast majority of the M&A market.
Gotcha.
What do you think? What's more interesting to you?
Um, I don't know. I'm a big hands-on learner. I guess I'm also sort of drawn to the middle market because I like these kind of nitty-gritty businesses. I mean, I've worked in grocery stores. I've built roads before. So I
Oh,
like that
cool.
very hands-on, and um, I also think that I'm just good at dealing with those types of founders. Um, like small businesses, kind of blue collar workers. Um, that's just sort of where I've grown up, and uh, I feel more connected to that side of the economy.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, especially if you've grown up more in Midwest, kind of not like in New York City or something. It's kind of normal to feel maybe a connection to a business down the street,
Yeah.
instead of some Fortune 500 that's headquartered in the Sears Tower downtown Chicago, right?
Yeah.
But cool. No, that makes sense. I mean, so the key for you is, think of that as like a working theory that you have. Like that's your indication. That's sort of where you're at right now. Think of that as a working theory, and you want to go out and have networking conversations to confirm or deny that. So go talk to
Gotcha.
those middle market bankers.
Yeah.
Are you getting a good vibe from them? Are they saying things that sound interesting to you? Or when they tell you about their day to day, are you like, oh man, I don't want to do that? Which one is it? And then to also do the same thing with Bulge. Maybe the elite boutiques,
Mhm.
um, especially early on. Talk to those seniors when
Mhm.
you get back, especially in the fall. Talk to the seniors who just finished those junior internships
Mhm.
and talk to them at a variety of banks and just compare your notes that you take on those experiences you hear about.
Mhm.
That should be informative.
Yeah.
Um, awesome. So, in terms of networking versus technical prep, what do you think
Mhm.
you're doing better at?
Um, it's a good question. I'd say I've got a decently early jump on both. Um, s- like I really used my first year of college to kind of dip my feet into both. Like I started reviewing the 400 question guide, and Obviously doing Adventus was very helpful to kind of see the ins and outs of a financial model. Um, I think that definitely gave me a better grasp on things when I do those like paper LBOs, paper DCFs, and just kind of run through everything like I would in an interview.
Hmm.
Um, but I also have done a good amount of networking. I'd say mostly with people in the middle market, but I have some pretty solid contacts at like Jeffries and JP Morgan and some of these larger firms as well.
How do you know if a networking call is going well?
Um, Honestly, it's just kind of a vibe thing. I think sometimes you get off the phone with somebody and you're like, man, I really look forward to speaking with that guy again. And then sometimes it's like, oh, that guy, I could tell he didn't really want to be on the phone with me so much. I'm sure he's just like stressed out about work. Um,
Yep.
so I don't know. I'm sure some of it is just people having a bad day, um, and working banking hours, maybe not wanting to have a phone call with some college kid. Um,
Well, be careful with that because, at that point they did say yes to you,
Mhm.
right? They are open to it.
Yeah.
And so I would sort of challenge you to think differently about that,
Mhm.
control what you can control.
Mhm.
So you can't control what kind of day they're having, clearly,
Yeah.
but you can control how that conversation goes. And sure, maybe someone's in such a terrible mood, it doesn't matter. But I would say, even if they are having a bad day, it's not that hard to be a small bright spot in
Mhm.
somebody's bad day.
Yeah.
Um, and the way you do that is, let them escape a little bit. Let them tell stories they like telling. Let them talk about themselves, or again, find some way to where again, so you can make it a quote an escape for them, so that they could actually enjoy it. Again, the
That makes
how.
sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, theoretically it makes sense, right? How do you actually do that? You know, well, it depends. So I guess on the conversations you feel like didn't go very well, can you talk me through one and kind of what happened, and where do you think that the call, didn't go as well as it could have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess really just some of the earlier ones that I did.
Yeah.
The first handful of times I was on the phone with a banker, maybe I was a little nervous, like I was stuttering. Um, so it's little stuff like that that's kind of mistakes on my behalf. That I really feel like I've sharpened up with. Um, but then also I have kind of gotten the vibe where sometimes if I'm asking them too much stuff about work, uh, and they're having a long day, maybe they don't want to talk about the deal they've been working on all morning. Like, so I guess that's a good lesson going forward. Try to get them talking about like football or whatever their biggest interest is, because people like talking about their thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think you're right. You can definitely run into people who don't want to talk about the deal they're working on. Maybe they can't.
Mhm.
Maybe they're limited in what they can talk about. They most likely are.
Mhm.
Or maybe they're just tired of it, which is also reasonable.
Mhm.
When it comes to small talk, if it's sports or, whatever's, if the weather or, what people did over the weekend,
Yeah.
um, all that's good. Definitely make sure you're starting off conversations with
Mhm.
things like that. A light icebreaker, that's just being human.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say, but you do need to get in there and start to talk shop. When I say
Mhm.
talk shop, talk about, you want to start a dialogue about the markets, about the profession, about the industry.
Yeah.
So the way to do that is asking them an open-ended question instead of like a closed-ended question. Like, can you tell me about the deal you're working on right now? But
Mhm.
that's actually, people might think that's a great question. No, that's a bad question. That's a yes or no question. You're forcing them to say yes. Can you tell me about the deal? Yes, I
Mhm.
can. No, I can't.
Yeah.
Right? And that's actually a leading question. You're forcing them to say yes, is what you're doing,
Mhm.
because it's not socially acceptable typically to say no. If I
Mhm.
say, "Can you tell me about this?" Yes, of course. I feel like I have to say yes, even if I don't
Mhm.
want to talk about it. So
Mhm.
instead, say, you know, of all the, if, especially if someone's been there for a couple years, like, what's been the best deal you've ever been on? Why
Mhm.
was it, and what made it fun?
Yeah.
That gives them, they can go a lot of different directions with that. Or what also is fun, what's the worst deal you were ever on? And why was it bad? You
Yeah.
know, what about it didn't you like? And they could tell, because what you don't realize is they could talk about 100 different things. Maybe it was like the client had no good food options around their office. And so when
Yeah.
you had to work all these late nights and doing trips to the client, you had to wait 45 minutes for something to be, you had to wait too long to be delivered and your food was
Yeah.
always soggy. It could be something silly like that, or it could be something really big and strategic. But in any case, the way you make it engaging for them is ask an intriguing question and allow them to take it many different directions. If you ask a really tight question, you're limiting the directions they can take it, and they're gonna naturally feel constrained, which is less comfortable, and they're gonna have less enjoyment because
Gotcha.
you don't know where they want to go,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You want them to lead. The way you let them lead the conversation is ask an open-ended, broad question where they can take 10 different directions. And then it's them choosing their own adventure. So by definition, almost they can't have a bad conversation if you do it well. It's hard to do well. I bet you've picked up on some of these things. What about what I just said, is something that you've already started to do, or that stands out to you as something that makes sense?
I mean, that's all really great advice, and it's good to be like explicitly told all that stuff. I mean, I think sometimes it's like you kind of know you should ask open-ended questions. You don't want to be on the phone with somebody like yes, no, yes, no. You know,
Right.
you
You know
want
what
you
that's
kind of
called?
want to do that. What?
That's called an interrogation.
Yeah, and exactly.
Exactly. It's a mistake everybody makes at least once. You want to prepare for the call. You've got all these questions written down, and then you ask them a question and they give a short answer and they're like, "Oh shoot, what do I do now?" Another question. Then they give you a short answer like, "Oh shoot, what do I do?" That's an interrogation. And you've got to break.
Exactly.
You have to. That is like break in case of emergency. Get the hammer out, smash that line of thought, get rid of it, because it'll absolutely destroy your conversations.
Yeah.
Um, Instead, yeah, just I would say have at least two different big open-ended prompt questions.
Hmm.
You know,
I like to ask, what makes a deal more or less enjoyable,
okay, that's okay. I
or
mean,
in
it'll
the
get them.
past, what has
It'll
made a
get them
deal?
talking.
Hmm.
It'll get them talking. Um,
Or like
you
a
want you
favorite
want to,
deal.
but I would challenge you to go to the next level. Like, make sure do research on somebody, and if you see that they have experience in the food and beverage sector,
Hmm.
you know,
Oh,
then ask them something about it.
yeah. I
Um,
found a lot of times people that work in industrials, um, a lot of times they'll have one or two companies that they're just real interested in for some reason. Like, oh,
yeah.
they make this like
What's your
fan
favorite?
blade.
Okay, here's a good one. What's your favorite company in the space?
Yeah.
How many directions can they take that? They're guaranteed to talk about something they're interested in that may or may not have anything to do with the deals they're working on.
Yeah.
That's an example that's an escape,
Hmm.
right? You're letting them go to the place they want to go mentally. Oh, you know what? I love this other company. They're so awesome. They have got this in the market share, and this is their marketing strategy, and this is why they've got great finance. And they're just off to the races telling you about something they're really interested in. Again,
Yeah.
it may or may not have anything to do with what they're working on day to day, and it really
Hmm.
gives them permission to take the conversation where they want.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know I'm a little bit of a broken record, but it's just so important, because it's all about the audience. It's not about you. Like you said, when if someone's having a bad day, you didn't you didn't cause that, but it
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you don't have an ability to influence them and to have a slightly better day, at least during the 30 minutes they're chatting with you.
Yeah.
Um, so it's good stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so tell us a little bit about your technical preparation.
Um, yeah, so I pretty much just go through the 400 question guide from mergers and inquisitions. I think that's pretty solid, very comprehensive. And
It
I
is.
also am like an avid reader, so I've been um just reading a lot of stuff on investment banking. I read oh, bless you, mergers and acquisitions for dummies. That was good, just to kind of get the lay of the land and see like what exactly is a sim and all that stuff. Um, and then I've also been reading Barbarians at the Gate, which is just kind of an overview of the RJR Nabisco buyout. Um,
Yeah. No, those are classic. I mean, I think definitely review some of those. I'm just kind of looking over at my shelf, my bookshelf here.
mm,
Um, you know, it's good to listen to those sort of, or sorry, listen. It's good to read those sort of classic investment banking, the ones they've made movies out of.
yeah,
That stuff is good. Treat that more as like fun reading.
yeah.
It's good for that to be fun. I probably wouldn't talk about things like that in any of my networking discussions or interviews. You
Okay.
know, you're going to want to more focus on, I mean, maybe, again, maybe if it's small talk and like, oh, I just finished Barbarians at the Gate. But if you say that, it just, I don't know. I don't really, it's like good to read for context. And if
Hmm.
someone else brings it up, like you should have read it.
Yeah.
It's bad if you don't read it, I guess is what I would say. But
Okay.
don't bring it up because um, but I would say, but look up books around like M&A, especially if you're interested in middle market.
Mhm.
Look up books around what most types of deals are.
Mhm.
A family owned and operated plumbing company that's been around for 30 years, and the journey of that seller to sell it, and all the issues they faced and trials and tribulations. Um, you know, read finds examples of stories like that, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a book. Maybe it's a blog. Maybe it's a video or an interview or a podcast, but find examples of those different types of M&A deals. I think the RJR Nabisco stuff is, again, it's huge. It's right front page of the Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
type
It's not middle
interesting,
market.
but it's not typical.
Mhm.
It's not it's not a regular deal.
Mhm.
It's a very unique specialized situation, and it's designed to be entertaining, and it is. And it is. But you will pick up some of the lingo, but it's good to read those books because of the lingo. So it's like one of those things, I would say it's kind of required reading,
Mhm.
right? Um it is kind of required reading. It is really good to read those,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't bring it up.
Okay. Good to know.
um I don't know, unless it's something happens that's really relevant. Again, if someone else brings it up, or someone says something super relevant, like, oh yeah, just like Barbarians at the Gate. But even then, I wouldn't say the name. I would say just like RJR Nabisco, or just like the person in the story. Like, make a real reference to the real person,
Yeah.
like you're knowledgeable about the topic, not like
Mhm.
just mentioning the book. So I don't know, tactical little tip.
Mhm.
Um, what's interesting, a little different about you, you're actually on you write for your, is that like a school finance newsletter? Is that related to school?
Yeah, we're kind of trying to break away from just being related to Miami University.
Okay.
Um, we actually rebranded, so now we're Unfiltered Finance. Um, but yeah, it's primarily targeted for students. We try to keep it like pretty simple and engaging to read.
Okay. How is that? How is writing um, for that news outlet helped you prepare?
Um, I mean, you're always gonna get the like, tell me about a deal kind of question.
Yep.
Or tell me about the M&A markets lately. Um, so that really forces me to keep a pretty watchful eye on that stuff. Especially because I focus on writing the M&A articles, um, or like M&A or companies that are going public, things like that. Um, I have a pretty intense focus on those kind of subjects, and then
Hmm.
I also get to um, be able to like sort of disseminate that information in a way that's conversational.
Okay. Well, let me give you some feedback right now, Jack. So let's just say we're having a networking call right now.
Mhm.
I would say with your answer right there, like your answer didn't further the conversation. Like you answered
Okay.
my question, but it wasn't interesting. What I was listening
Okay.
for, what I want to hear is a story.
Hmm.
Like, because I asked you, like, how does writing for the newsletter help you prepare for investment banking? What I'm looking for is like, tell me about, what? I think it's helped me improve whatever ABC skill, and you gave some overview stuff, but then get into an actual example. Like specifically, I did an article covering this transaction, and here's
Hmm.
what I learned about it, and now I've used to that specific reference and that specific thing I learned to engage in better conversations with experienced bankers, right?
Gotcha.
Just tell a specific story.
Hmm.
That'll lead to a more engaging discussion.
Okay.
So I'll put you to the test right now. Give us a specific story. What specific story, like what article that you wrote or contributed to, really stands out to you as one where you learned a lot?
Um, yeah, so I guess one that I wrote was on the I think it was March consumer credit report. Um I mean I had heard what the consumer credit report was, but I had never really done a deep dive into one. Um so writing about that and then just kind of how Americans' finances are compared to how they were like 20 years ago. Um, that definitely forced me to take a deep dive into that economic report that I really wasn't knowledgeable about it all beforehand.
Okay.
And then I've also written about a few industrials companies. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
one, oh, I forget what it was called, but it was they made parts for oil pumps
Okay.
basically. So the stuff that sucks the oil out of the ground, they made the tubes and then these little tops for the machines that like regulate the flow of that oil. Um, so it was interesting just to learn about how many nitty gritty kind of pieces and parts go into that business.
Yeah.
And then it's not just about oil itself as a commodity. There are plenty of other um, kind of producers that make little
There's
parts and
other
tubes and things
applications.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. So I like that. The industrials, the company that makes the parts for the pumps,
Mhm,
that's the level of specificity we got to get to.
mhm,
And so, you know, so what I like what you did there was your first example was so like
mhm,
consumer report, like okay,
mhm.
come on, I want something M&A related, right?
Okay.
So but that was good, but you got the juices flowing. I could tell the wheels are turning.
Mhm,
And so then you went into the hey, but actually this other example is probably better where
mhm,
you worked with a specific company. So what you're going to want to do when you go to that example, use
mhm.
the industry lingo,
Okay.
right? Because right there, what I heard you right there, I heard you use regular sort of layman terminology, which is
Mhm,
fine. There's
mhm.
nothing bad about that, but it's a missed opportunity
Okay.
because one of the things about investment banking is you've got to be able to get smart on industries quickly. And the
Mhm,
first thing you'll know about industries is they all use different language.
mhm,
They all use different industry standard language. So if you can get in there and talk about some of the industry specific language, and because take something like the airlines, right? You've got hub and spoke models, revenue per seat mile. Like there's so many unique things about the industry and how they talk about it that's unique. Um, every industry is like that. And so on this, I would challenge you to continue to prep for some of these calls and build out that example because you need to have an example of what you learned from that finance letter. 'Cause
mhm,
especially if you're going to put it on your resume,
mhm.
people are going to ask about it.
Yeah.
Be ready.
Okay.
Because if you're going to tell me you got a whole lot out of that, and then I
Mhm,
ask you about one experience, and you're like, well, I'm not sure, it's like, what am I supposed to think? Like, what is this? What's going on? When actually you did have a really good experience and you did learn a ton, right?
mhm,
Um, and so it's that's one of the things and if you can have more than one, but I do like it where you did research on a company or research on an industry, and you got something out of it. It just helped you understand something better. And it doesn't need to be amazing or groundbreaking. Like no one's expecting something that's not typical or not reasonable. You know, but it's really more about you know when did you work hard? You learned something. You made something better because you did great research.
mhm.
And then now these are stories that you're going to be telling in your networking calls, but also in interviews down the line.
Gotcha.
So you want to think about those different. Those are good examples of different experiences that you can refer back to. But it all comes down to a specific example. Don't tell me you worked on 10 companies.
Mhm.
Tell me a detailed story about one company.
Okay.
And now tell me you did 10, sure, but don't stop there.
Mhm.
Say and specifically,
Yeah.
it was our CJ and family pump parts.
Yeah.
All right, but you got to know the name of that business. You got to know the name of that industry. You've got to be like, yeah, they were, um, I don't know, an aftermarket supplier of brake pads,
Mhm,
that fit on Ford, Ford Fusions and Chevy Impalas, and that's all they did. But you see how immediately, like Okay, now you sound out. You're showing up as someone who knows a little bit about the business. You don't need to be an expert, but who are their customers? What do they do? How do they make money? Start to use the lingo a little bit and speak in the language of business.
Mhm.
And that's how you're gonna continue to tighten up that networking approach.
Okay.
So, all right. What else? What else is on your mind? I think what is there anything else that you're struggling with, or anything else that just stands out to you that you'd wanna dig into related to your recruiting efforts?
That's a good question. I guess primarily my focus has been on people in Cleveland offices.
Okay.
Um, so I was just curious if I wanted to transition, maybe do 2 years at a bank in Cleveland, and then try to get to a New York office. How would you recommend going about that?
Um, I mean, so that transition is not necessarily, that's not like a downhill transition, right? That
Mhm.
one's not just going to fall in your lap. That's something that's an uphill change that you're going to have to really work for.
Mhm.
That's not a bad thing. It just is. Uh, the New York banks are not out there hunting for people in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Um, but is there opportunity? Absolutely. Is getting your foot in the industry an opportunity to go deeper into the industry in different parts? Absolutely. Um, you know, it's just going to depend a lot. Um, but if your focus is more city and less bank type, then that's an easy yes. You're going to have the most success. Let's just say you're at a middle market bank in Cleveland. You're going to have more success at a middle market bank in New York,
Mhm.
right? But making a jump from middle market Cleveland to bulge bracket New York,
Mhm.
that's going to be tougher still. Everything is doable, but
Mhm.
that's going to be tougher still.
Gotcha.
Um, and vice versa. Being a bulge bracket banker and trying to transition over to middle market, like there's people who are bulge bracket New York.
Mhm.
It's actually not an easy transition to go middle market Chicago.
Really?
That's that's not an easy transition for the bulge bracket bankers, and vice versa, because they are different jobs.
Mhm.
If you haven't run 10 middle market M&A processes, you haven't run 10 middle market M&A processes. How do
Yeah.
you even know what the middle market? They're just the whole process is different.
Mhm.
There's the major phases, and there's certainly lots of overlap. But in terms of the way the average analyst will contribute to that process will just be different in many ways. And
Okay.
that's the time they're actually on a deal. A lot of times bold bracket bankers are handing off execution to an M&A team,
Mhm.
and they're just a coverage banker. Whereas in middle market, you tend to do coverage and execution.
Okay. That
So
makes
you can
sense.
so you can see if the jobs are different, they're not going to translate well, and the bankers know that. They're going to ask these questions during the interview. How
Mhm.
many how many deals were you on start to finish?
Yeah.
You know. But I say all that to say, but your question was about geography. And your question was, if I start in Cleveland, can I get to New York? The answer is absolutely. Um, Absolutely, you can. Put in the work, do the networking, pound the pavement, visit New York, make friends there.
Mhm.
Visit New York often. If that's really your long-term goal, then start visiting now. I mean, get out there. Make sure you're visiting every year and doing banking networking stuff.
Mhm.
You know, make sure you know every alum that's out there. Um, do all the things to lay the groundwork, and that's the way to be successful.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you really can't start too early. Networking is about building a network. It's about making lots of positive impressions, and um, and that's really so. It's the same keys to changing geographies even after you've been graduated for 3 years. It's going to be the same fundamentals you're following right now.
Okay.
You're trying to learn. Build the technicals. The technicals you'll be pretty strong on. So you're going to just be spending then it's about networking, talking to as many people who are in that city or who are as possible, so you can get a sense for the market. Also, again, the M&A market is cyclical, like we were talking about.
Mhm.
That's going to apply a lot when you're moving jobs.
Okay.
There's, especially when it comes to moving jobs, there is boom and bust. When the markets are quiet, they're just ticking along with the basic deal flow that we were talking about before.
Mhm.
You're very unlikely to get hired.
Okay.
You're much more likely to get hired when things are going really well
Mhm.
and everyone needs help. So the timing of when you're trying to do that matters as well.
Okay. That
Um,
makes sense.
but if your focus is geography, again, you don't have to stay in investment banking. Maybe you make a switch to internal corporate. Maybe you do it again. If geography is really your number one goal, then you can go into other financial analyst roles, start thinking about other types of paths. Maybe you join a small private equity shop.
Mhm.
There'll be lots of opportunities to get to New York, but the key is
Okay.
explore all your options. You got to figure out where the opportunity is,
Mhm.
because you graduate in 28. You're
Yeah.
talking 3 years after you graduate. We're talking 2031. I mean,
Yeah.
good gravy. Who in the world knows what's going to be happening in 2031?
Mhm.
We're all be completely different people with you know with I don't know AI implants in our brains. I don't know, but but yeah, the point is like that's a long ways away. And but the short answer is to your question, absolutely you can. Just it just comes down to what job are you trying to get and what skills do you have that really relate to that job. How similar is it to what you did? Because just because you have the same title doesn't actually mean that much,
Okay.
especially in a banking analyst type of a role.
That's interesting.
Um, yeah. Again, people care about industry experience a lot.
Mhm.
So if there's a middle market PE shop that does a lot of industrial deals and you are in a middle market industrial group, you're going to have a really good chance. They're probably going to want to talk to you.
Yeah.
But if you're middle market industrials group and you're trying to go to, you know, the the sports M&A practice at Goldman Sachs,
Mhm.
like they're not going to touch you with a 10-foot pole unless you
Yeah.
have done an amazing job networking and your parents know somebody. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
making stuff up. I'm making stuff up. But you see what I'm saying? There are, it's going to be an uphill battle, but sometimes it's climbing Everett's and sometimes it's just going up a regular hill and it's just
Mhm.
some extra work and you can get it done.
Gotcha.
So but cool. All right. All right, Jack. Well, hey, no, this has been great to chat.
Mhm.
Appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, this was very
Um,
insightful.
excellent. Excellent. Well, keep hanging in there, keep networking, don't stop, and we wish you the best of luck.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Enjoy your night.